Ready and go. Welcome everybody to another episode of PhinManiacs Live. I am your host Louis Sung, and it's just me tonight, folks. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about, though. Still, we still got a lot of stuff to talk about. We got the Miami Dolphins managed to just barely beat the San Francisco 49ers, although God knows why it took that long for them to beat them. Although it did have some poetic justice to it, as Kiko Alonso managed to be involved in the final hit to take out Colin Kaepernick right before the goal line. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then, of course, we'll talk about what the Miami Dolphins managed to do against the 49ers and the absolute disrespect that the 49ers defense showed Ryan Tannehill and exactly how Ryan Tannehill made them pay for it. You don't get to do that in their house. I don't think so. And then, of course, at 8:30, we're going to be hearing an interview from Sam Madison that we had just a couple of days ago. And Sam had some really interesting stuff to say about the DBs, if I might take his little thing there, and also a lot about the other rest of the defense and what he prefers in coverage schemes. In other words, man versus zone man zone, zone zone. You get the idea. So first thing is first. The final game against the last week's game against the Miami Dolphins and the San Francisco 49ers. I was actually at that game as a part of the Web Weekend event that the Dolphins do every year. And to say that it was a heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching, everything-wrenching kind of game, I felt like I was twisted into a knot right until the final play of the game when I thought to myself, very briefly, I had this moment of the Dolphins are going to lose this game, aren't they? Because let's be honest about this. If you were watching on television or if you were at the game, there was still a part of you that was worried about them still being the old Dolphins where they somehow found a way to lose this game. And that's something that, despite all the talk about culture change, which is real, by the way, it's something that doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a few weeks. This is something that Adam Gase is going to have to show is going to be going on for a couple of years at least before fans get this idea that, oh, well, we really are a brand new football team. Because there's always going to be that lingering doubt, I think, that is this really real? Are we really on a 6-game winning streak? Yes, we are, ladies and gentlemen. We are on a 6-game winning streak. However, that does not mean that they were perfect by any means. No, they definitely had their issues. The defense kind of blew it right near the end. They let themselves get away from they were up by 3 scores at least, and the Dolphins let the 49ers get all the way there. Oftentimes on the feet of. On that note, Colin Kaepernick, let's just put this into perspective. Colin Kaepernick, who is the 49ers quarterback, he ran for 113 yards on 10 carries. Think about that for a minute. The quarterback was the leading rusher for that game. 10 carries, 113 yards. Carlos Hyde, who's their running back, only got 65 yards on 13 carries. He averaged 5 yards a carry, but he only got 13 carries. As for Jay Ajayi for the Dolphins, 45 yards on 18 carries. That's 2.5 yards a carry. Is it any question that the offensive line is super important if Ajayi is going to get anywhere in the running game? That's something we'll discuss a little bit later. But right back to the defense now. All I can say at this juncture is that the defense is not a playoff caliber defense. And I mean that to say that the defense has this issue where they seem to crash at the worst possible times. And let me just put it this way, Kiko Alonso, he's done a fantastic job as the middle linebacker, and he should be brought back next season. And if he isn't brought back next season, we're going to have some issues in Miami because he's quickly become a fan favorite. Kiko Alonso with the whole he's made turnovers in his last 3 games. He got an interception against the 49ers after tip drill. He got his first career touchdown interception against the Chargers, against Phillip Rivers, recovering fumbles, forcing fumbles. The man has gone back to being a playmaker. So that is something that you can't get away from. You need Kiko to be sticking around. But for all that stuff that Kiko was able to do, he was not able to catch Colin Kaepernick. Kaepernick ran by him so many times that it wasn't even funny. Again, 113 yards rushing for Colin Kaepernick on just and not even on designed runs specifically. No, he had a few designed runs, but a lot of the times This was just Kaepernick seeing that Cameron Wake and Andre Branch were coming around the edges, and he decided to take the open road up the middle and get away from there, and then just outrun Kiko Alonso to the sideline or something along those lines. As for Jelani Jenkins, who's also supposed to be there as the nickel linebacker, well, I keep being told that he's hurt, and that's why he looks so awful. But my response to that would be, if you really are hurt, then you shouldn't be in the game. You should be sitting on the bench and letting Neville Hewitt get your snaps, because that's kind of the Adam Gase MO, you know? If a player is hurt, then they're not in the game. They are sitting on the bench, healing up, and preparing for when they are needed later on. If Jenkins is really that messed up, why is he not on the injury report? Why is he not getting looked at as possible getting out of the game? Why is Neville Hewitt not just being named the starter and he stays out there the whole time? Why does Jenkins need to be the nickel linebacker? If he can't move, you can't be a nickel linebacker. You can't be an anything linebacker. And the man looks like he's a statue falling over every time he tries to make a tackle. That's not going to cut it, especially with the linebacker core being as unstable as it is. Kiko Alonso, for what it's worth, has been the most stable linebacker the Dolphins have had. And he was the guy everybody was worried about. Oh, well, he's not going to make it healthy. He's not going to be the guy because he's just going to get hurt like 4 games into the season at the most. Kiko's held on. Now, he did wind up getting on the injury report today because he seems to be dealing with some kind of an issue. I don't know if it's something that is bad yet. We're going to be keeping an eye on that. And then the other thing to keep into consideration is that the linebackers with Neville Hewitt, they seem to just move better from what I can tell. Hewitt knows how to tackle. He can cover a little bit. Is he as good as Jenkins when it comes to covering? I don't know. Supposedly, when Jenkins is healthy, he's a lot better. But we haven't seen him healthy this year. At least that's what we're assuming. I don't know if maybe this is just a matter of Jenkins is not as good as we think he is, and it's time for him to move on from him and let Hewitt take over to begin with. I don't know. I'm honestly looking forward to what happens, but I'm just looking at this situation. I'm thinking Kiko needs to stay and Jenkins needs to go. Now, here's the other thing that needs to be taken into consideration. The secondary. Byron Maxwell has gotten a lot of criticism, and a lot of it was happening during the game on Sunday, saying that Maxwell did not do well. He should have been covering this guy and this guy. Why did he get this penalty? And Sam Madison, when we do our interview at 8:30, he will be addressing that. But I have to look at it from this perspective as well. What exactly are we trying to compare him to? What are we trying to say that Byron Maxwell should be doing? Should he be lockdown, shutdown corner guy? Somebody like a Revis Island back in his prime saying that Darrelle Revis can handle anybody at any time, and that's what Maxwell should be doing because he was on the Legion of Boom, the Seattle Seahawks? I don't think that. Now, I've been disappointed in Maxwell too this season, and that's why he got benched to begin with. Adam Gase benched the guy and put him in favor of Tony Lippett, which seems to be working out pretty well because Lippett's developing and doing a pretty nice job. But Maxwell came back in when Howard got hurt, and now Maxwell seems to be doing a decent job. He seems to have figured things out, seems to have gotten himself back in the game, getting back to where he should be. So that's a good thing as well. But what are you comparing him to? Brent Grimes? Because if that's the case, then from last year to this year, Maxwell and Grimes, I'm not seeing much of a difference. I think Maxwell is more physical. I think Maxwell does a better job of getting guys off their routes, which is so important nowadays. And with the whole press corner thing that's needed in this defense, that's something that needs to happen. So I'm pretty happy with Maxwell right now. The 49ers try to take advantage of the defense's weak points. Nobody knows the weaknesses of Byron Maxwell and Kiko Alonso more than Chip Kelly from when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles. Byron Maxwell said before the game that Chip Kelly changed his life, that Chip Kelly believed in him and gave him a shot when nobody else did or something along those lines. And essentially the man paid him, which is what he's really referring to. So good for Byron Maxwell. He got paid, and I'm very happy for him because obviously every NFL player wants to get paid, which is great, and you got to make your money somehow. But Byron Maxwell has done a great job given everything that's gone on, and Kiko despite being picked on early on in the San Francisco 49ers game, he got his feet under him, and he eventually made it to the point where he was where you needed him to be at the right time, back to being playmaker guy. Was he able to catch Colin Kaepernick in a foot race? No, and very few people will be able to. But he was there when you needed him, and he capitalized on the opportunities given to him. And while I don't know how many people will admit it, I don't know how many people will discuss it, but I have no doubt that a lot of what Kiko was able to do is also because of the things that he did in the name of the Cuban people. Colin Kaepernick, although he said that he wanted to make it a focus on Malcolm X and his open-mindedness, managing to meet with Castro and maybe get some new insights on the way things that go in the world, that's all fine and dandy. You want to go there, but if you're going to say stuff like that, first of all, you shouldn't say stuff like that because, like it or not, Fidel Castro was a dictator to the nth degree. He was, quite honestly, a despicable human being, and I don't know how anybody can possibly defend the man. Like that's when Colin Kaepernick goes into education and literacy rates in Cuba. Well, yeah, he controls what they read, which is fine. And communist countries can lie about whatever they want. You're just going to have to take their word for it. It's not like they're making it open to the world. Oh, look at how transparent we are. They only let you know what you want them to know, or vice versa. I don't like to talk about it, but that's the way it is. Fidel Castro was a horrible human being, and it's incredibly ironic that the man dies the very week that Colin Kaepernick decides to come out and say what he said. I was there at the game. The boos in the crowd were much, much louder than even the cheers in the stands when the players came out onto the field. The Dolphins came out on the field. They cheered pretty loud, and that's the new stadium. It's loud. Colin Kaepernick took the field for the first time, and the boos rocked the stadium. The Cuban Americans made their presence known that game, and they made it known all throughout the game. I heard insults. I heard anger boiling over, and then you saw the fight on the video, and then the Dolphins had to ban their tickets. I don't know if they were Cuban American or not, but it's clear that emotions were boiling over in that game. Kiko used that emotion, which he did later admit that there was some bad blood with the whole Kaepernick situation. I have no doubt that motivation is what drove him to be able to get in there and do such a good job. It's always nice to have the extra motivation. And I'm sure Kaepernick had motivation too. It's not like Kaepernick's been having whales of a game every single week. He's been on and off pretty much all season long. But against the Dolphins, after his comments, after Armando Salguero, who did an amazing job showing his viewpoints and discussing them in a dignified manner. So props to him for that. But you know what? I look at this situation and I think Kaepernick did this to himself. A lot of ways Kaepernick did this to himself. Because you have to know when is a good time to say something and when is a good time to keep your mouth shut. It's the wise people who know when to keep your mouth shut. If you just keep opening your mouth and getting yourself into these situations, then you're going to be looked at as a fool. You need to have some tact with your words. When's a good time to say something? When shouldn't you say something? I learned that lesson against the New York Jets when the New York Jets game happened. And I said that I wish the Dolphins had played really well and lost than sneak away with a win that they didn't deserve. I got into a lot of trouble with that with you guys. You didn't appreciate that much. And I can understand why. A win is a win, all of that stuff. I get that. I totally get that. But my point was I just wanted to see the performance. I wanted to see consistency. I wanted to see that even if they don't necessarily win the game, they still show that they have the skill and they have the consistency to get the job done. They've gotten better at that over the past few weeks. And I have not switched my position on what it is that I'm wanting to see, but I can understand where I went wrong with what I said. That's the lesson that Colin Kaepernick needs to learn. He needs to learn that just because you can say it doesn't mean you should say it. Even if you sincerely believe what you believe, you have to realize that there's a time and a place to say certain things. That was the worst possible week to have ever said anything like that. How dare you go out there and say Fidel Castro did this and did that? Even if you keep trying to make it about Malcolm X again, but that's not the point. You kept trying to make it about Malcolm X because you wanted to avoid the whole Fidel Castro aspect. Why is it significant that Malcolm X went to talk to Fidel Castro, who is a dictator? And I don't know what else to say about it, really. I'm honestly not sure what to say about it. I'm actually gonna have to listen to my lesson here and realize that maybe it's time to just back off the subject. Fidel Castro was not a good man. And for all the things that people have tried to come out and say that he did this and he did that, and you have all these people mourning him and saying that he was one of the premier world leaders of the modern era, I don't know how you can think that, but that's your bag. And honestly, I'm not interested in listening to it. So we're done with Kaepernick and Fidel Castro. Thank God for that. Now let's talk about the offense for the Miami Dolphins. How many of you noticed how often the 49ers had 9, 10, 11 guys in the box? Was it clear that they were trying to stop J.J. or not? I think it was pretty obvious that they wanted to stop J.J. And guess what? They did. Congratulations to the San Francisco 49ers. You managed to stop the J train in its tracks. Good for you. But did they realize that there's more to the Miami Dolphins than a running game? It doesn't look like it, does it? Ryan Tannehill looked just about as good as I'd seen him all year long. And by the way, that's also saying in the sense that Tannehill has improved a lot over the course of the season. He's found a way to fix that footwork of his, which has done a lot for his ability to avoid pressure, step up in the pocket, step into throws, all of the stuff that he should have learned a long time ago under Joe Philbin, but never did because Joe Philbin is not a good coach. Dan Campbell, for all of the qualities that he has, is not a great football mind. So he was not able to do it either. He brought some physicality back, but that's all they got. So it wasn't enough. With Adam Gase, Tannehill has, I think that this is what Tannehill would look like with his fullest potential unleashed. His consistency so far for the past few weeks, he's looked pretty darn good. Don't know if it can be sustained or not. That's something that we're going to have to see over the next few weeks and maybe even the next few seasons if he manages to keep this up. But Ryan Tannehill, 20 for 30, 285 yards, 3 touchdowns. He only got sacked twice. And those were little lapses in his judgment where he probably should have thrown the ball away instead of just taking the hit. Those are still things that need to be worked on. There's still things that need to be improved upon. That's the craziest thing about Ryan Tannehill, folks. He's not done learning yet. And I'm sure the joke will be made that, did you know that Ryan Tannehill was a wide receiver in college? Irrelevant at this point. The simple fact of the matter is, whether he was a wide receiver in college or not, Tannehill was not given the tools necessary to be an NFL quarterback. And it seemed like he was the only one a lot of the time. Now you're going to talk to me and say, Lewis, didn't you say all season long that Tannehill had to go and that the Dolphins needed to find a new quarterback? To that, I would say, actually, no, I didn't say that. What I did say was that Tannehill was not playing well at the time I said it, and that the Dolphins should look into drafting another quarterback to compete with Ryan Tannehill and maybe push him to become a little bit better than he currently is. And by the way, I still maintain that position. Because nothing in the NFL gets you to play harder than the idea of somebody gunning for your job. Because once somebody starts gunning for your job and in turn gunning for your paycheck, that's going to get you off your butt. Now, I'm not trying to say that Tannehill was lazy. Oh, far from it. Absolutely not. Tannehill is one of the hardest working guys in the NFL, and anybody will tell you that, including opposing teams. But that doesn't mean that there isn't still a little extra oomph that can be put into it. Tannehill wants to succeed, but the extra push of having somebody behind him saying, I'm coming for you, so you better be really good, that can get somebody going. Now, it seems that Ryan Tannehill doesn't need it currently, but I would still like to have another quarterback sitting behind Tannehill, if nothing else, to develop under Adam Gase from the ground up. Will that be Brandon Doughty? I don't know. Brandon Doughty has good accuracy. He seems to find open receivers. He doesn't have much of an arm, though, which is something that could be a major concern. I've hearkened to using the comparison of Chad Pennington over the course of the season. Could he beat Chad Pennington? Maybe, if Adam Gase is really that much of a miracle worker. But if that is the case, then I would absolutely part ways with Matt Moore come next season, because if Brandon Doughty can be the backup quarterback while Tannehill stays in there, then that means that we don't necessarily need to keep the veteran quarterback around any longer. Brandon Doughty can take over as the backup, which I would be all for, because Matt Moore is much more expensive than Doughty could ever be. Well, not ever, you know what I mean. The 49ers showed Tannehill such disrespect, and he made them pay for it. That's the mark of a good quarterback. That's the mark of a competitor, a leader, somebody who wants to get that game won, which he did. He did win it. They were up by 3 scores, and the defense let it go. That doesn't mean the offense was perfect. That means they were pretty darn good. 31 points is not easy to come by, especially not when you're considering that the Miami Dolphins have been able to score 31 points. For how many games did they score 31 points or even 30 points last season? Did they ever score 30 points? I honestly don't remember at this point. So you have to look at it in that aspect. You can tell the improvement. You can see it. It's not just a marginal improvement or even a status quo. You can see it is growing and evolving as the season goes on. With Jay Ajayi in there, he can run the football. He runs hard. You have Ryan Tannehill, who seems to have woken up under Adam Gase. You see guys like Jarvis Landry, Devontae Parker finally started to hit his stride. Of course, now he has the back injury, so maybe we're gonna go back to square one. Maybe Rashawn Scott can do something. I don't know. He seems to have a really good competitive edge to him. That's kind of like a Rashard Matthews situation. I think he could do that. Then you have guys on the come up like Leonte Carew. He got his first touchdown reception. Jakeem Grant, little Grant. He's got some issues, but he's got all the talent in the world. And I think if he ever got to the point where he could be a Darren Sproles-like guy, I think the Dolphins could be very dangerous with him. But he's got to get those hands fixed. So if Jakeem Grant somehow hears this, take a deep breath, brother. It's all right. Move on. Confidence is still there. You're still awesome. You have all of the explosiveness in the world. You just got to make sure you secure the football first. That's step number 1. After that, just go. That comes naturally to you. The Dolphins have all the weapons you could possibly ask for, except for maybe a decent tight end. And I think they do have a decent tight end. Marquise Gray is actually pretty darn good and better than I thought he would be. And Dominique Jones, with his limited playing time, he actually did show a little something here and there, which leaves Deion Sims as the potential third man who would be out. And if I'm not mistaken, Deion Sims' contract is up after this season. I'm not sure. I'd have to look into it. But you look into this situation and you think the Dolphins have something going here. Yes, they do. But all of that goes away without the offensive line, which, by the way, I will talk about in a moment. You have these guys, they're pushing the offensive boundaries of the Miami Dolphins' recent history. These guys, Adam Gase, has found a way to make the offense run again. And not just figuratively, of course. They also mean that literally with Jay Ajayi. 200-yard games back-to-back do not happen by accident, and certainly not to one-hit wonder running backs. He's got all the talent in the world. He'll push and shove you out of his way. And now is when I go into the offensive line. Ajayi can push and shove all he wants to. But if he doesn't have a hole to pick up some steam, he's not going anywhere. Because there are very few running backs in the NFL, if any at all, that can sit there and say, I can run right through everybody, and I don't even need a hole to run through. I'm just going to mow everybody down. Maybe LeGarrette Blount. That's about it for the New England Patriots. Maybe that's like the only guy who can do that. Ezekiel Elliott, I don't even think, for all the talent he has, let's not forget that he has the best offensive line to football to run behind. It's not exactly hard to be an all-pro running back behind them. So now you have the offensive line. When Jay Ajayi was running for 200 yards a game, he had all 5 guys: Brandon Albert, Laramie Tunsil, Mike Pouncey, who I think is actually the anchor to this whole situation. And then you had Jermon Bushrod and Jawan James, who are actually the weak points of this offensive line. Still pretty darn solid, even though I'm not really a big fan of James this year, and I think he's actually the weak point of the offense because he keeps making stupid penalties at the worst times. Somebody once told me that Bushrod was the weak point because he keeps getting shoved around. Well, I'd rather get Bushrod get shoved around than Jawan James ruin his own drive by getting called for holding after a big play, which has happened one too many times this season, or maybe more than one too many times. But back to the Mike Pouncey thing that I just mentioned. Pouncey is the anchor to this whole running game. Do you know that, guys? Do you know this? Mike Pouncey, when he was in there was push, there was shove, and Pouncey was able to get people out of his way and in turn get people out of Ajayi's way and let him pick up that steam that lets him get 200 yards a game. When Pouncey went out, suddenly it doesn't seem that physical anymore. And that's not an accident. When the season started, they had Brandon Albert, they had Laramie Tunsil, they had Bushrod and James, and the center was Anthony Steen. And not to take anything away from Steen because he's done a fantastic job in the role as a backup, but he's not Mike Pouncey. Not even close. And there are people saying that we should move on from Mike Pouncey because he's not reliable and he gets hurt too often. And you don't see the Steelers moving on from Marquise Pouncey, who, by the way, is also a key cog in that offensive line. And when you have a key cog in the offensive line that you need to have around, you keep him around. Look at what's happening without Pouncey in there to help Bushrod and to help Tunsil in the running game. Ajayi can't get anywhere. 2.5 yards a carry. And that did have something to do with the whole 10, 11 guys in the box thing. But if you have push on the offensive line, you should be able to find at least one hole and let Ajayi pick up some steam and break tackles. He couldn't get anywhere. That's a lot to do with the fact that Pouncey's not in there. You could probably get away with having Craig Urbick. You might even be able to get away with having Sam Young there. But Pouncey was the reason that those guys were able to get push because he was the only guy missing at the beginning of the season when the Dolphins couldn't run the ball to save their lives. And we were beginning to think that it's the same old Dolphins where they can't run the ball and they're going to have to throw it 400 times a game in order to get things going, to even have a prayer of scoring points. Then Pouncey comes back and everything changes. So once again, who's the focal point of this running game? That's Mike Pouncey, folks. You can't move on from him because you need him. Unless you find somebody who can be just as good or perhaps better than Pouncey, then you got to stick with him. Albert is good at left tackle. He's going to try and play on Sunday. I don't know if he'll make it or not. Terrell Suggs will be gunning for him if he plays. Laramie Tunsil will probably play. And he'll be able to do something, whether he's at left tackle or left guard. He'll be able to help out. He'll be able to keep Tannehill protected better. But I'm worried about the center position. And not because I don't like Anthony Steen. I do. But he's not Mike Pouncey. Steen can help keep Tannehill protected to a certain extent. But he's not going to get you push on the offensive line, which is what Ajayi needs to get going. And the Ravens are going to be trying to take advantage of this all game long. So this could very well become another Tannehill game. And based on the past few weeks, that may not necessarily be a bad thing. But if you don't get some push on that offensive line and you have to become one-dimensional, then I'm a little afraid of what might happen because the Ravens are no pushover on defense. Their offense might be a little suspect from here and there. Joe Flacco has a really good arm, but he's not as accurate as you would like him to be. Mike Wallace, he's supposedly having a career year with the Ravens. That's a short crossing route, has revived his career, and he's leading the team in yards and in touchdowns. Good for Mike Wallace. But Steve Smith, and then you got the running backs. The Ravens are no pushover, folks. And I think that's why everybody's thinking that the Dolphins might actually lose this game because the Ravens know how to push and shove, and they have constantly pushed and shoved their way against the Miami Dolphins for quite some time now. So I don't know what's going to happen then. The number to call is 954 or excuse me, sorry, folks, I messed that up. It's actually 786-351-8935. Number to call again is 786-351-8935. If you want to call in and give me your thoughts, want to talk about something specific on the show, you can call in and we'll discuss it right now. But right now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and play the interview with Sam Madison and hear what he had to say about the Dolphins game against San Francisco, the defense, and maybe even get a prediction about what his thoughts are on the Ravens game coming up. We're joined now by former Miami Dolphins cornerback Sam Madison and also Super Bowl winner with the New York Giants, and we have him to thank for stopping the New England Patriots from messing the 1972 season up. So thanks for that, Sam, and thanks for joining us.
Hey, man, it was an honor. If it was up to me, I would have played all my careers here with the Miami Dolphins. But, in the National Football League, guys move around all the time. Brass make decisions based on their football team. But it was great for me to be able to go to New York and eventually have an opportunity to stop that football team of the New England Patriots. But it was fun, and the whole time I was doing it, believe me, I was thinking about the aqua and the orange and the Miami Dolphins.
And we all thank you for that, keeping it real right here. So, yeah, gotta love the Dolphins for what they do. Speaking of which, somehow the Miami Dolphins have found a way to get to their 6-game winning streak, and if I recall, they haven't done that since I believe it was 2005, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 2005, and I was on that team, back then, and to be able to watch these guys. Since I've been back from New York, man, it's been, very up and down season, but, throughout the course of the last 6 years doing radio and television with the Dolphins and, having that experience to be able to get off of the field and into television and radio and deal with fans on a closer base, just having them to have that confidence to have the structure, in place to be able to put guys on the field that can, give us that edge back, whereas putting a good product out there to be able to put W's in the win column. So it's finally starting to turn for these guys. You look at the different pieces that they've brought in. Cam Wake, one of those guys that's been here for a while and went through that up and down, as well as John Denny. Seeing those, and John Denny was on that winning streak as well, because that was his rookie year coming into the league. It feels good to be able to watch him after football games and still having that smile on his face and being able to say, hey, guys, look, it's not going to be easy. We put in the work. The dedication has to be there. But then still have somebody there that's been through it and be able to push the younger guys, but, have that importance saying, hey, we can do it. We just have to put our mind to it, and we have the guys in the right place. Coach Gates have come in as well as Vance Joseph and pushed these guys and made them believe in one another and believe in the system. And that's really all you can ask, but now you just got to get that production out of the players, especially at this point in juncture of the season where we've seen the nosedive over the last 4, 5, 6 years, to see if they can keep that thing in the right angle, and that's going upward trajectory. And, yeah, people don't want to talk about it, but you have to put them in that playoff mix right now.
And yeah, we all noticed that nobody seems to be giving the Miami Dolphins any credit. We've all seen by now Stephen A. Smith laughing about even the idea of the Dolphins making the playoffs over the Broncos, even though that they are currently in the wild card spot. But I digress. You mentioned the downward spiral that the Dolphins were in, and it seemed to be continuing earlier this season. They started out 1-4. They looked just about as bad as they possibly could have looked, and then all of a sudden things just started spiraling right back up again. So why do you think it was such a drastic change? It was like first they were going absolute down, and then suddenly they're right back up again, and it wasn't even it was seamless. It was just down, up.
Lewis, you spoke about earlier, me winning the Super Bowl when I was in New York, and one of the things that I kind of attribute our start of the season and the way that the Dolphins are playing right now is, and even have an opportunity to speak briefly about it over the last couple of weeks, you look at this defense, you look at the offense, and you look at even special teams. A lot of different pieces on this football team that never played together. You have two brand new corners. You have Tony Lippett as well as Byron Maxwell. You have Issa Abdul Kudus as a starter. That was three new pieces in the back end. You look at the linebacking core, bringing in Kiko Alonso. You look at the defensive line. Remember, Cam Wake wasn't starting the season, so you only really had one starter, from last year's football team. And in being in the Vance Joseph defense, you didn't really know exactly what you're going to get. Guys didn't really understand where the play was going to be made, who was supposed to make the play. Going into that Super Bowl year in New York, we started out 0-2 as well. And the thing that I can attribute to back then and looking at now, guys always were expecting somebody else to make the play. Over the last couple of weeks, Kiko Alonso didn't worry about anybody else making the play. He went and made the play. Yes, and Dominican Sue, he's getting double teamed, but yet and still you have the linebackers, the defensive end, Andre Branch, or whoever the case may be, applying the pressure and allowing Cam to eventually come in and make those sacks. Now guys are saying, hey, I'm going to do my job. I can sit here and I can watch film all day long versus somebody else where Vance Joseph brings in film and I'm able to watch somebody totally different playing my position, but that's not me. That's not the guy. I'm not communicating with that person or anybody else. Now they have the film of themselves not making that tackle, missing the tackle, not coming up with the pass breakup, not coming up with the interception, not holding the double team or holding the end of the line and allowing the linebackers to flow. These guys are finally understanding, hearing and understanding the voice of the players that they have no idea, how that person play with one another. Now they have it. They have that 4 or 5 games before the break to put film that the film was on, and they able to go back. And Vance Joseph able now to go back to the old film that he had and compare it to the new film that he had and say, guys, you're in the right place, but you didn't pull the trigger. You're seeing guys coming up, pulling trigger, being confident, understanding the scheme, the call, how Coach Vance Joseph as well as Coach Gates want them to play, and they're going out there and they're playing together. So it's just fun to be able to see this football team, progress, and hopefully they can keep going. So it was the same exact thing on the offensive side as well. The whole entire offensive line, in 1 week, out the next, in another week, and then you put them all together. So it all boils down to guys having to understand who they playing with, have that confidence to play with one another and say, hey, I'm going to make the play. I'm not going to depend on anybody else, and that's what we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks.
And that communication, yeah, it's definitely made a big difference, and I can definitely understand what you're saying there. So now I'm going to ask you a little bit more about specific players, like some players that you would have some kind of hand in knowing what they're dealing with. Tony Lippett has come on, and he's started to start looking much more like a cornerback than the wide receiver than he used to be. But he had some struggles early on in the season, and I'm sure that's also part of understanding the scheme too. But he has to go some individual development. And what is it that you've seen now from Lippett specifically that you didn't see maybe earlier on in the season?
Well, knowing that he's going to be the one that's in the position, you go out and you draft a guy, Xavier Howard, and, he's going to be the one projected to be the starter opposite of Byron Maxwell, who they gave a lot of money to. Now, Xavier, he doesn't come out and he doesn't start right at the beginning, and then you're placed in that role, and then you're always looking over your shoulder like, okay, Xavier's going to come in, and then, I'm going to be out. How many reps am I going to get? I'm going to be in these meetings. I'm going to be prepared. It's all like we always talk about next man up, but when you always have somebody looking over your shoulder, it's like, okay, I'm just going to get these practice reps, and then somebody else, no, you're going to be the starter. And now he's playing like, hey, this is my spot, and now somebody has to come and take it away from me. And now that confidence level, knowing that you're going to be on the field, the other 10 guys expecting you to be out there 100% of the time and to make those plays. And for him, a couple of weeks ago to go out there and get that interception and get that monkey off his back, because all it really takes is the first time to know that you can do it. Yeah, we at Lewis, we've been to a lot of practices, especially last year, man, people throwing the ball at him in practice, and we saw him climb that ladder and make those interceptions. Not only out in the open field, but even down in the red zone. He made those plays, but it's totally different in practice versus when you get in the game. In practice, they don't really count. They say, okay, yeah, he could do it, but let me see him do it in the game. We just went over these plays over the last 3 or 4 weeks. You've seen it over and over. You know what was coming. You knew I was called. But now when you do it in a football game, hey, I really can play in the National Football League. Guess what, guys? I'm ready to go. I'm ready to step up. And then once again, it all comes down to confidence. Now his confidence has skyrocketed. He's played and started consecutive games back to back, and now you get into that mode to where this is my spot. I know that I can play in the National Football League, and I'm going to go out here and I'm going to go against some of the best talent in the world, and I'm going to get it done. And that's what he's been doing. So seeing that transition of him, knowing that he's going to be out there on a regular basis, and knowing that all the other 10 guys out there are dependent on him to get it done, it seems like he's getting it done in the classroom. Then when he comes out on the football field, it seems like it's translating, and he feels like he's one of the boys now, per se, when you get out on the football field, because guess what? His name is going to be called at the beginning of the game as a starter running out of that tunnel, and now he's saying, hey, I'm not going to let my teammates down. I'm well prepared, and I understand what Coach Van Joseph wants from me, and I'm going to give it to him.
Which brings up my next question, and this might be something of a good problem for the Dolphins to have, although it is still a problem. Xavier Howard is going to be coming back pretty darn soon. What's going to happen now? Is Howard going to take over for someone else, or is he going to have to fight his way back?
I definitely think he's gonna have to fight his way back. I mean, especially when you're coming off an injury, you still don't want to throw a guy out there. People really, hammered me really hard and like, hey, why is Cam Wake on the sideline? Why he's not getting all those reps? Why he's not in the game? He's making all this money. Guess what, man? He had a really bad injury, and he needed to get back into the groove of things. Xavier Howard, he played pretty well, when he was out there, but this football team, they're winning, and they have been winning without him. I wouldn't throw him right back into the starting lineup unless something drastically happened to one of the two corners that's out there right now. Can you put him in a situation to where you may be able to go 4 wide receivers, and then you can get him some more reps here and there? But, like you're saying, it's a good problem to have. Now you have guys out there pushing one another. You have players on the football field that's hungry, because Xavier Howard, he's seeing the production in the meeting room. He's seeing the production during the games when he's on the sideline. And now you have an opportunity, to push these guys and make sure that, hey, don't take this for granted and think that it's automatically yours, because there is somebody ultimately behind you that's trying to take your position. So this is a good problem for the Dolphins to have. A young corner sitting on the sideline, understanding how this game is to be played, because you remember he was really, really close to making a couple of plays, when he was starting, but just wasn't there. Now he'll understand how to make those plays. He's been able to see him on the field. He's seen Tony. He's seen Byron. He's listening in the meeting rooms to what coach is telling him, and being able to have that opportunity to grasp it and put it into his long-term memory bank. But I'm not looking for him to come back and be a starter right off the bat. He's definitely going to have to work his way back, but this is a really good problem to have. But maybe even be able to throw him in the mix in some nickelback position, because we've been seeing a lot of different mixtures of defensive backs going in there with the different formations teams been throwing up. So just want to see him get back healthy, but knowing that we have another corner that we can put out there and be aggressive at the line of scrimmage and knock off that time of the route. Good thing for the Dolphins to have for Vance Joseph.
And that leaves the final starter to ask you about, and this one's more of a, I don't know if I would say controversial, but it is something that people have been conversing about. Byron Maxwell has gotten a lot of mixed reactions from fans. There are some who are saying he's actually doing a pretty good job. There are some who are really upset with the penalties that he's gotten, the mistakes that he's made. What is your idea of what Maxwell has done this season as a former cornerback?
Well, as a defensive coordinator, you have to find out what players do well, and I think Coach Joseph has finally found out what this football team does very well. You put a guy in a position to where he can make plays. We saw him come up with the big interceptions a couple of weeks ago, but Byron Maxwell, he has gotten better. Throughout the course at the beginning of the season, he was benched because of the lack of effort at tackling and not being in the right place. Yeah, this is the National Football League. You're going to get penalties. And the other day, he got a crucial penalty on a third down. I don't think that was his problem. He didn't turn the guy. I thought it was an excellent play. He was in position to make that play. A couple of weeks ago, he wasn't in that position, but he hasn't wavered. He hasn't ran. He's been out there. He's practiced his behind off, and I think he's gotten, 100% better from the first couple of weeks. But it's still one of those curves to where, you look at this front four, and Vance Joseph coming into the season said that he wanted to be an attacking style defense. You have to understand what you have first before you can really, put everything on the field. But he's been putting them in situations, and he's been going out there and he's been answering the call. Do we want him to give up the plays that he's been giving up? No, nobody wants to give up a play. But the other side of the ball gets paid as well. But when you get paid the money that he's getting paid, and the microscope that he's going to be placed under, and looking at the different ways that this football team plays, you're going to have to take that criticism. But what are you going to do with it when you get on the football field? You have to be able to bounce back, and he's been doing a really a better job of executing, coming up, making some really good tackles, some tough tackles, and we didn't really see that early on. But when you're a person and they bring you in at the beginning, and all of a sudden they expect you to make all these plays, he was in his mindset, listen, I have to stay healthy, I have to stay on this football field, but you have to give up your body in certain instances, and not really worry about being injured or being hurt. Remember what we talked about. It's all about the next man up. And early on, it just seemed like he was playing not to be injured, not to be hurt, and wanting to be on the football field so people didn't criticize him, and it got him in a tough situation. Now it doesn't seem that way. He's coming up. He's making physical, strong tackles. He's covering a little bit better in position. It seemed like he wanted to make a play, to say, hey, I deserve this, or, I am here. And, he was leaving a lot of plays out on the football field. But it seemed like he's corrected those things, and now Vance Joseph has him in a situation to where he can trust him and put him in situations to go out there and make a play for him. So, still a learning curve, because you have to realize, coming from Seattle, having 4 down linemen and 2 all-pro safeties behind you, all you really have to do is just sit there and make a play. But now going to different teams, going to Philly, where in that scheme, that system, you had to play zone, you had to play man, you had to play zero man, where you had no help. It was tough for him to really learn, but now it seems like Vance Joseph had put him in a situation, and he's starting to step up, but still a learning curve for him, still a young player, and I think he'll eventually get it.
Do you think part of the scrutiny he's under is because he's being compared to the production that Brent Grimes had while he was here?
Yeah, Brent Grimes was a playmaker. I mean, it didn't matter what system, and Brent played off, and guess what? They want you to play press, and when you have corners, or no matter what position players in it, then you come behind them, they look for the same production, and that's just not the case sometimes. So yes, he's going to get that scrutiny, and then I know people are looking at Brent, that he's in Tampa and he's making some plays, and like, why did we get rid of that player and this player not making any plays? Yes, he's going to get that scrutiny because of what Brent Grimes has done over the last couple of years, and he's not showing that flash that Brent brought with the first year that he came.
Yeah, that was probably what we were worried about with Maxwell. I was like, is he going to be as good as Brent Grimes? Of course, Brent had his own issues, but I'm not going to go there. So now my next question for you: you brought up the different schemes, zone, man, near zero man, all that stuff. What have you noticed works better in the NFL as a whole? Because it seems to me that playing zone is kind of counterproductive the way that offenses are run nowadays.
Yeah, and when you're able to put five guys out into a route, and if you don't get any pressure, and because you can't really hit the wide receivers down the football field at the 5 yards anymore, it really puts the defense in a tough position, in a tough situation. So, for me, if you're going to blitz and you're going to try to get that ball out of that quarterback's hand, you have to go to a lot of that man unless you have three or four guys that can really get up to the quarterback and apply that pressure with four, and now you can utilize those seven in the back end. But with the way that the Dolphins have been playing the last couple of weeks, which is putting teams in third and second and long versus early in the season was second and third and short. Now you're able to drop back into that zone. So it really comes down to what you're doing in those first couple of downs to allow you to play that press or that zone. But I really like to have guys up in the base of the wide receiver. Yes, you're going to give up some plays because those guys get paid, and we went through some of the best in the league and going against some of the best quarterbacks so far. You have to be able to switch it up and mix it up. But getting in third, putting those teams in third and long, it helps you out a lot, as well as it helps the defensive line, knowing that they only have to play one way, and that's getting after the quarterback versus having to still worry about the run.
All right, so now I'll bring in next week's game. Going to be going up against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore, and there are going to be some familiar faces, particularly one wide receiver who, once he got here, did not do as much as he was expected of him, and now he's kind of looking for revenge, sort of. So now I'm going to ask you this, Sam. If you are a cornerback and you're Vance Joseph, how are you going to deal with the deep threat that is Mike Wallace?
Well, it goes hand in hand with that defensive line. Pretty much try to make them one-dimensional. You go and you look at, the way that we've been playing the last couple of weeks, been able to stuff the run, and now you didn't really have to drop that safety down in the box. Remember, when you get hit, you start to get alligator arms sometimes. So, and with the way that Baltimore is utilizing Mike, they're giving him the deep ball, but yet still you still have to worry about somebody else. Still have to worry about Steve Smith running the short and intermediate routes and being physical and tough, just like one of our wide receivers that's not going to back down from anybody in the secondary, Jarvis Landry. So, it comes in a situation to where, you still want to make that football team one-dimensional, not allowing them to run the football, and now you can keep both of those safeties over the top and put pressure on Flacco and get that ball out of his hand because, like we talked about earlier, if you give a quarterback opportunity to be able to sit back there flush, keep him clean in the National Football League now, these quarterbacks, he is one of those quarterbacks that make all the throws. If he's under pressure, he still sit in that pocket and make that throw, and the wide receivers are making plays for him. So for me, get up there, press him, have somebody over the top. Steve Smith is not really the deep threat that he used to be. Never been a really deep threat. He was one of those guys that was just physical and make plays, once he got the ball in his hands and just keep somebody over the top of him all the way, the whole time that they did when they was here, when he was here with the Dolphins. But, if you're able to get him shied away from that and just being able to go one-on-one, utilize Tony Lippett, if he's going to be available, put Tony on him and then, not allow him to get deep and make that home run play, you can still keep him in check. But going to be a tough and hard-nosed football game. The defensive side of the ball for the Baltimore Ravens, they're going to be physical. But you can keep that offense on the sideline and keep the ball in our possession and wear down that defense, then you automatically know that they're going to have to throw the ball, and then they're going to play in our favor and utilize Cam Wake to put pressure on the quarterback.
All right. Now, before we let you go, Sam, and I know this is kind of a little more of Little Troy's territory, but yeah, can we ask a prediction for you from Sunday's game?
I still think, it's for the Dolphins to always go to Baltimore has been really tough winning games up there, but I think it's a winnable football game. I mean, this football team is not the Baltimore Ravens. They're not one of those teams of the past where you automatically say that they were going to win at home, and they've been playing extremely well. They're going to be physical, but now I think we have a football team that can match that physicality. I think we have a running game where the Baltimore's run defense haven't been as strong this year. I think if we can run the ball, control the clock, utilize our weapons on the outside, I think we'll be successful, but we can't turn the ball over, and we can't allow Ryan to continue to take those big hits that we saw early on in the season. But this is a football game that's winnable. We need to win it. It's going to be the same fashion where we saw the Cincinnati Bengals a few weeks back. Going to be a physical. They're going to try to run the ball, and then they're going to try to make a couple play X pass here, to the wide receivers. So winnable game. Just want to see a good football game and just see if the Dolphins football team is ready to make that extra step into the right direction under Coach Gates.
So do you think they'll win or lose?
I'm going to go with the win, man. Listen, I'm a Dolphin fan, and I like what I've been seeing over the last couple of weeks. It's going to be close. It's going to be tough. But I'm definitely going to go with the Dolphins. I'm not taking the Baltimore Ravens lightly, but I think our football team have played some really tough football teams early on. They understand what they're getting into, the physicality, and Coach Gates have these guys' mindset in the right place. This football team now, for me, seems like they know what to expect every single week. They know what to expect going into each and every game, and he's been having them very prepared for whatever the opposing team been throwing at them. And then after coming out of that halftime break, made some halftime game adjustments that we haven't seen over the last couple of years that really put the game away. But still a good running game. I think we'll have an opportunity to pull this game off and keep us in that playoff hunt.
All right, Sam, I really appreciate that. Thanks for I had to get that from you because it's like you gave me an answer, but you didn't give me an answer,
It's all good, man. But yeah, man, I think this football team is headed in the right direction, and I like where it's going, and the players are buying into what Coach Gates is selling.
Well, that's a good thing because we've had a long, tough stretch of years these past few years, and it's nice to see the Dolphins finally moving on up and getting past the other issues that got them in the news for all the wrong stuff. We're finally starting to escape all that.
Yeah, definitely, and the players that we brought in, and one that I'm really loving, not complaining, could have been hanging his head, Damon Williams. When you go and you look at the players that's on this team right now, and how the players that we've drafted and brought in are accepting, their roles, and that's what these guys are doing. They're accepting their roles, and they're going out and they're performing. So it's really good to be able to see our draft picks, panning out, and we're putting them in situations to be able to win. And then the veterans that we bring in are starting to mix right in. So, having the right mixture of players and the mindset of the players, along with the coaches, man, it feels good to be able to watch this team and say, okay, this is how you put a football team together and ultimately help them grow and have that long-term success of winning football games. So it's fun to watch.
Yeah, it sure is, and hopefully we'll have a lot of fun watching it for the next few years to come. Well, Sam,
Yes,
I want to thank you, Sam, for coming on with us. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. So, hope you have you on again sometime.
Yeah, man. Thank you, man. It's been a long time. We've been trying to get this thing together for a while, but we just had an opportunity. So, after this web weekend, I was like, Lewis, man, we got to get it on, and we was able to do it, man. So it was fun, and I look forward to doing it again soon.
All right. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
All right, y'all have a good one.
And that, of course, was our interview with Sam Madison. And he said a lot of interesting stuff. And I have to say that probably the biggest thing that stood out in my mind was, at the moment, the development of Tony Lippett. He brought up the whole confidence factor. And I think that's important to note because Tony Lippett's confidence, and pretty much everybody's confidence, has pretty much skyrocketed since over the course of the past 6 games with the whole winning streak. You can tell that this team, this is part of the culture change, the confidence, the swagger. This is what the Miami Dolphins had for the first 2 weeks. Dan Campbell was in charge, and then it kind of fell away after the New England loss. That was all that confidence just kind of seemed to drain away really quickly when New England reminded them that they weren't a good football team, which is kind of sad, unfortunately, but it is what it is. With Adam Gase, however, the confidence is not fading, and neither are the wins. Tony Lippett, in particular, he got benched. He lost his job to Byron Maxwell and, of course, Xavier Howard, the rookie. And then Maxwell didn't do a good job, so Lippett got the call up. And he did his best. He wasn't doing all that great, but he was still doing better than Maxwell was doing. So Maxwell got to stay on the bench, and Lippett got to get those reps. And eventually, as time went on, he started getting used to it. Like Sam said, he got a couple of starts in, and now all of a sudden he's in the game, and he's doing a pretty darn good job. Finally got his first interception. Got his first 2 interceptions, in fact, against Phillip Rivers, who by and large is considered one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. So that's a pretty big deal. The idea that these guys are developing, finally developing, maybe this doesn't, like, I wonder how often this doesn't come off on people. This impression is not given. The Dolphins have a lot of players who have tons of potential, but it never gets utilized because of bad coaching / poor development / a number of different factors. And right now, it's starting to look like that it's all starting to come together. Tony Lippett was a 7th round draft pick, a long-term project that wasn't supposed to be able to play yet. He wasn't supposed to be able to play yet. He shouldn't have been playing yet. And the fact that we had to use him was a detriment on the offseason the Dolphins had, where they couldn't secure another veteran cornerback to pair with Byron Maxwell, who wound up not doing as well to begin with, and that led to Lippett playing anyway. Lippett's already starting to look like an NFL cornerback, which is astounding to me, and it really speaks to the job that Lou Anarumo, the secondary coach, is doing along with Vance Joseph. Just think about that. Tony Lippett was in college as a wide receiver mostly. He had some work as a corner, but not much. And already he's a starter in the NFL and doing a darn good job. He's not perfect, but he's doing pretty well. So that's development. Bobby McCain, people were upset with him a little while ago because of the penalties that he made. Bobby McCain is a playmaker. When you make plays, you're going to get called on stuff. And he's still young, and he's still developing. There's the word again, developing. He's not going to be that superstar yet. He may not become that superstar, but that doesn't mean he can't be a good slot cornerback. Look at all the players that the Dolphins tried to bring in to be the slot cornerback. Ben Wicker, he was supposed to be a slot cornerback. He didn't get to play. Chris Culliver, a lot of people said he was a slot cornerback. He didn't get to play. They didn't get the scheme, or they just weren't good enough. Their bodies weren't physically ready. All these other kinds of excuses. They didn't play. Bobby did. And Adam Gase has shown that he has no qualms, none at all, about taking somebody out and putting somebody else in. Mario Williams, perfect example. He was an all-pro. He's the epitome of defensive end pass rushing skill, and he's going to be with Cameron Wake, and they're going to be an absolute terror in the edges. Mario Williams has been irrelevant all season long. Andre Branch has done a better job than Mario Williams, and that's not to say that Andre Branch isn't good. He's done a great job. But the fact is that Mario Williams was supposed to be the guy who was supposed to do all this stuff. He was the one who was supposed to be counted on. He was the one who was supposed to be the guy everybody was afraid of, while Cameron Wake was sitting on the bench, resting up and making sure he was ready for a playoff run, which, by the way, ironically enough, we may need him for now anyway. And he hasn't done a thing. So you know that Gase has no problems with benching somebody. Bobby McCain hasn't been benched. So that means that the Dolphins obviously are doing something right. And I can't say that they have absolutely no depth. They have options out there. It's not like Chimdi Chekwa doesn't know what the defense is doing. He knows what it's doing. They just prefer Bobby McCain. It's not hard to pick up somebody off the street who they already know can do the job because they were with him in camp. Jordan Lucas is still around. They could have picked him up. They could have let him. Well, he's on the practice squad, but anyway. He's on the roster. I'm sorry. He's actually on the 53-man roster. But Jordan Lucas hasn't been able to do anything. Bobby McCain's been there, and he's done a great job. So the problem is just everybody doing it as a whole consistently. Because these guys are still developing, they make slip-ups. And usually the slip-ups happen right when you can see them, which is the unfortunate part.
You see Andre Branch, he gets sacks. Cameron Wake has 8.5 sacks already. And that's after spending a pretty decent portion of the season not as the starter. You have Ndamukong Suh. You have Jordan Phillips, who also is developing and is starting to show a little bit more than he used to. He might be a slow process, a slower one than we were hoping, but he is actually getting somewhere. And Lord knows the man is athletic. I mean, you saw that interception that he made, and he hurdled over the one guy who tried to tackle him. Like, big man not supposed to be able to jump like that. He can. He can do pretty much anything. Jordan Phillips just needs to be consistent about it and work on that strength in his motor. Adam Gase will get that out of him. Neville Hewitt, another one who's developing. He's been on and off. He's done a pretty good job. He knows how to tackle. That's something I can definitely give him. He knows how to tackle. And a far cry better than Jelani Jenkins has looked right now is just specifically tackling. He has something there. He can be developed. So can Rashawn Scott, who's getting called up in favor of in lieu of Devontae Parker maybe not playing on Sunday. He's got something there. He can be developed. So can Jakeem Grant. So can Leonte Carew. So can a lot of guys who was on this roster. Ryan Tannehill, another perfect example. Adam Gase fixed possibly the biggest problem in Ryan Tannehill's game. His footwork was awful. And in training camp, I made a video and I tweeted it out, and everybody told me Ryan Tannehill's feet look worse out of all the quarterbacks out there, which consisted of Matt Moore, Brandon Doughty, and Zach Dysert, who, by the way, is actually a friend of a family I know that I'm friends with. Zach Dysert and Brandon Doughty and Matt Moore had better feet, better footwork than Ryan Tannehill, the starting quarterback. That's pretty sad. And now Adam Gase has found a way to get Tannehill to move around in the pocket. He's got him moving around. He's got him not standing there like a statue taking hits. He's moving up in the pocket. He's dodging defenders. He's doing this. He's doing that. Development. And this is why I said that all this time that this is not the year to get excited. And I'm going to have to start wavering on that stance, because if they keep winning like this, maybe this really is the year to get excited, a year earlier than I was expecting. I still think they'll be better next year, after Gase has had a full year of getting these guys a full year under his belt, a full year of being able to get guys that he wants in there, specific players that he wants on both sides of the football. Because a lot of the stuff that happened, they're still guys that he didn't necessarily handpick. I'm sure he's not going to say no to Ndamukong Suh or Cameron Wake. That's definitely nothing that he's going to sneeze at. But he didn't pick Jordan Phillips. He didn't pick Jelani Jenkins. He also didn't pick Tony Lippett or Bobby McCain. And he's making it work with these guys for the most part. Imagine what happens when he gets some players that he actually wants on the defense. Some players that fit the Adam Gase mold, if you will. Somebody who fits the Vance Joseph mold. Players that they decided, we want this guy in here because of this. All this winning that the Dolphins are doing now, honestly, is patchwork. Think about that for a second. A lot of what's happening is patchwork. Sam Young at left tackle. He's definitely not somebody you want starting for you. Craig Urbick at left guard. You don't want him starting there. Anthony Steen? Backup role, sure, but you don't want him as your starter. And then you got a lot of other guys who are playing backup. Tony Lippett was supposed to be a backup. He's starting. He's doing a pretty good job. Neville Hewitt has some talent. You got all these other players. Bakari Rambo literally came off the street and started balling out like a real-life Rambo. Go figure. All of these guys are being developed by Adam Gase and being used to become better players. These guys are players who came off the street and have started to ball under Adam Gase's coaching. Development is what the long-term future holds for the Miami Dolphins under Adam Gase. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And I don't say that to say that I'm just getting hyped up and I'm excited. No, I'm looking at this from an actually logical and rational standpoint, that these players who I was very disappointed in at the beginning of the season, and I was starting to get disappointed at Adam Gase, somewhere after the bye week, something clicked. Was it Mike Pouncey coming back and getting the O-line going and the running game going?
Maybe that has something to do with it. But that doesn't necessarily fix Ryan Tannehill's footwork. That doesn't necessarily get the secondary to actually be a competent secondary. That doesn't get the linebackers to start making plays. That doesn't get Kiko Alonso going. All of this is a factor of the coaching the Dolphins have not had for the past 4 years. Joe Philbin and Dan Campbell held the Miami Dolphins back. Well, not Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell was only for half a year, but whatever. So specifically Joe Philbin. The Dolphins were held back for how long? Because of bad coaching. Now you have a guy who knows what he's doing. Now you have a guy who built the culture that the Dolphins need to succeed. And you're already seeing signs of what is yet to come. If the Dolphins make the playoffs by some miracle, I'm still not sure if I want to say that they'll make it, because they do have a tough road ahead of them and the Broncos are not going to go away easily. If they do somehow make the playoffs, that's the ultimate victory for Adam Gase. That's his way of making a statement and saying, here's what I can do with guys I didn't pick. Now watch what I can do with guys I did pick. Just think about that for a second. We are on a road, ladies and gentlemen, where the Dolphins could potentially have a long road, a good long few years of just being a successful football team, of being a team that you have to look at with respect and dignity. And maybe the national media will finally acknowledge their existence. They don't even bother to say that they're bad half the time. They just pretend they're not there. They'll talk about pretty much anybody except the Dolphins. Now they're having to take notice because they have no choice. 6-game winning streak. It's very hard to ignore that and not be called out for being biased, which, of course, no journalist ever wants to be called out on that, but they are regardless. I'm also biased. I'm consider myself a journalist, and I'm also biased, and I admit it. But that's the simple matter of the fact. The Miami Dolphins are on a road with Adam Gase where they could potentially be competing for a Super Bowl at some point in the next couple of years. And I mean that sincerely, because the way he develops players, the way he gets guys going, the way he finds a way to get these guys to the best of their abilities. They play to the best of their ability because he knows what they're good at and what they're not good at, and he puts them in position to succeed. What a novel concept. And just think about what it would have been like if we had guys like this is not the most talented roster that the Dolphins have had in the past few years. It's not. It really isn't. They've had much better talent in the past few years with Joe Philbin, and they've looked awful because Joe Philbin wasn't a good coach. Imagine if Adam Gase had come, this Adam Gase, maybe not the one from a couple years ago because maybe that one wasn't ready to be a head coach, but imagine if this Adam Gase came into the organization a few years back and managed to work with Tannehill from the ground up. Could you imagine? It's possible we could have had an elite quarterback. Some people are calling him elite right now, and I would disagree with them, but he's looked a lot better. The future is bright, no matter which way you slice it. Even if they don't make it to the playoffs this season, we have all seen the capabilities that the Dolphins have to be a good football team, provided the right pieces are in place. The coach is already there. The offensive line still needs work because of depth and all that sort of issue, because they can't seem to stay healthy. That's something they'll work on. And I'm sure that Adam Gase is going to be already putting that on his to-do list for the next season, because this man is such a staple of preparation. This guy knows what he's looking for, and he knows what he's looking at, and he knows what he wants to do before it's even time to do it. He didn't call up Rashawn Scott just because, oh, the kid's talented and we'll bring him in. He's getting ready for just in case Devontae Parker is not ready to go. And Scott can provide some physicality and do some things that Parker could possibly do. He's not going to be as good as Parker, but he's going to be close. That's preparation. That's being ready for it. That's having the foreknowledge, the ability to see it forward into the future and say, hey, I might need this. I better get ready. That's Adam Gase, ladies and gentlemen, and that's the reason for hope. As for the Ravens game that's coming up, I don't know if they're going to win or not. Sam thinks so, although I'm wondering if Sam is just saying it like all the love in the world to you, Sam, but I don't know if your prediction was because you really think that or because you're the Dolphins guy, which I understand. I'm all for that. I'd love to think the Dolphins are going to win. I don't know if I can go there yet. Terrell Suggs didn't practice today. That helps a lot. We'll see if that continues over the course of the week. There are a lot of players in the Ravens that kind of scare me.
I believe Timmy Jernigan is his name, the defensive tackle for the Ravens. Laramie Tunsil said that he got beat up by Timmy Jernigan in college. And I mean that metaphorically, not literally. He didn't get roughed up and mugged. He just got beaten a lot. So that's kind of a scary prospect to think that Jernigan's going to come back and try to beat Tunsil again. That's a little scary. You have guys on that defensive front and guys in the secondary, guys in the linebacker core. These guys are no joke. And the offense could have themselves a rough day unless they decide to stack the box and try to make Tannehill beat them again. It's going to be a tougher challenge than the 49ers for sure. But it's not impossible given what we've already seen. Joe Flacco, I said this earlier in the show. He has a terrific cannon for an arm, but his accuracy leaves something to be desired. I'm not necessarily scared of him. And everybody wants to point to 2012, I believe it was, when Ray Lewis finally won his final Super Bowl, went out on top, and he got to retire as the champion. Everybody said Joe Flacco looked as amazing as any quarterback has ever looked. That was 1 year. Nobody's saying he's elite now. That one season, that one playoff run is almost a forgotten memory at this point because Flacco can't keep it up. He's not that great. And I dare say at this point that there are a lot of people who would take Ryan Tannehill over Joe Flacco, given that they are willing to look at the films and compare the two. I don't know what to think of the Ravens game. I tentatively want to pick Miami because they've already shown they have that tenacity that they were missing in the previous Ravens games. And they barely won last year. And I think it was last year, I think. They won 15-13, if I remember the score correctly. And they had their backup quarterback out there. It wasn't Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco wasn't playing. He was hurt. And they only barely won 15-13 with most of their guys ready to go. That's not okay. And that wasn't okay. This year is different. This year it's Adam Gase's Dolphins. So I don't know if they'll make it. The Ravens are tougher this year. They have more guys healthy. Flacco's going, not their backup quarterback who couldn't complete a pass if life depended on it. Under normal circumstances, that is. I want to say that the Dolphins will win this game. I want to say that they'll win by a close score, somewhere along the lines of 21-20, because I'm thinking that both offenses are going to struggle to get by because I don't think that Mike Wallace is going to be as much of a threat as people wanted to make him out to be. I'm thinking that all Byron Maxwell has to do is give him a shove at the line of scrimmage, and Wallace isn't going to do that well. And then if he does get past, then you just have another guy over the top to make sure he doesn't get the deep ball that easily. Because once you give Wallace a hard time, he's going to drop the ball. We all know this. The defense can be beat if they decide to stuff the box. And if they do stuff the box, then Jay Ajayi can run all over them. All he needs is one hole, just one hole, and he'll be able to break a 20-yard run. That's what he's already shown. That's what we know he can do. But he needs a hole to run through. If they give him space to run, he will run, and he will make them pay for it. And then if they do decide to stack the box again, then it's Tannehill time. It can be done, ladies and gentlemen. The Ravens can be beat. They can stop being our bullies because the Dolphins are bullying other people now. Maybe they'll take out another quarterback. Maybe they'll knock out Flacco out of the game. That seems to be a pattern that happens nowadays. And then once they get past Baltimore, then the Arizona Cardinals are next, and they're reeling. They're not nearly the juggernaut they used to be. Maybe Carson Palmer is finally ready to call it quits. There's a lot of stuff that's not going right for the Cardinals, and a lot of stuff that is going right for the Dolphins. They could steal that game at home. There's a possibility, ladies and gentlemen, that we could be talking playoffs in a few weeks. There's a possibility, for all we know, Rob Gronkowski is out for the rest of the season. For all we know, the Patriots could lose one more game, and then suddenly the Dolphins are in the running for the AFC East crown. Could you imagine the upset that would be if all of a sudden the Dolphins went from irrelevant, somebody like Stephen A. Smith laughs at the very idea of going to the playoffs, to somebody who stole the AFC East away from the New England Patriots, who everybody thought is unbeatable, who everybody thought, as long as you have Tom Brady, you can never go wrong. You'll always be okay because you have Tom Brady. He'll always find a way. All they need to do is lose one more game, And the Dolphins have a real shot at getting that AFC East crown. Because if they manage to win at home against New England and they win all the games coming forward, and I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's a possibility. If they manage to do that, they've stolen the AFC crown based on divisional record. Because the Dolphins would have won against the Bills and the Jets again, while the Patriots lost to the Bills before Brady came back. It would be a tie record, sure, but we would have the AFC East crown based on divisional record, and we would be the champions of the AFC East in Adam Gase's first year as an NFL head coach. And there's only going up from there, just because of the way he does things. I don't know what to expect. I'm tentatively getting my hopes up. It's a very scary thing to do because I know we've been burned many, many times before, and there are a lot of wounded Dolphin fans out there who are starting to feel the love again, but are afraid to because they're afraid they're going to get slapped all over again. And I can definitely understand that feeling. But if nothing else, I'd say the future is bright. And I'd say that the Miami Dolphins have a real shot at being contenders for the next few years under Adam Gase. If it happens this year, I don't know. I want to think it will. But even if it doesn't, there's nothing but good things to go from there. I'm going to go ahead and call it a night here. We talked a lot of good stuff. Sam Madison had a lot of good stuff to say, and I'm glad to have him there. He's my buddy. Glad to have him there. So I didn't have Chad today. Chad's out having a family time, I guess, which is great. I enjoy the fact that Chad gets to hang out with his family. The guy's a busy dude, and he doesn't get a lot of time. So hope you're having a great time, Chad. We'll see you next week. And that's going to be it for this show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all so much for joining me. The show will be up on iTunes and Stitcher and SoundCloud. And, of course, it's going to be here to watch again on YouTube. So if you want to check it out there, you can. And as always, I'll see you next week for another episode of the PhinManiacs.com podcast, PhinManiacs Live. Good night, everybody.